Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October 15th, 2024 meeting of the Litchfield Planning Board. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I'll start with the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair.
Jeremy Robitaille, Secretary.
Letha Riley, member.
Russell Blanchett, member.
Travis Tucker, member.
Okay, good evening, everybody. With us this evening is Jay Minkara from NRPC, our circuit rider. Welcome. Joan McKibben, our planning board administrator, is not here this evening. First item is public input on non-agenda items not listed on the agenda for this evening. Are there any people in the audience who wishes to comment on non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items. We're going to do things a little differently this evening. I'm going to start with number one, the conditional use permit, and then I'm going to do, because we have folks from the Heritage Commission here this evening, I'm going to do them second, and then we'll get to the site plan application for the Lobster Boat Condo Association. So the first order of business this evening is a conditional use permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit at 11 Carlisle Drive, tax map 13, lot 155. Applicant is Lisa Silva. Is the applicant present this evening? All right, can we ask the applicant to come to the table, have a seat, and introduce yourselves to the board? And we need you to state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Lisa Silva, 11 Carlisle Drive, Litchfield, New Hampshire, 03052.
Okay. And we have before us this evening I believe this is a detached accessory dwelling unit at 11 Carlisle Drive. And looks like we have the paperwork. I know I spoke with you, Jay, this afternoon. You said that there wasn't a plot plan with this.
I'm just bringing up on the GIS an image of the site.
Okay.
This will give us an aerial.
Got it.
So this is the house, and I'll ask the applicant to correct me if I'm wrong. This would be the barn.
That is correct.
Okay. I do have a rendering that was attached to the application, just so you know. I think everyone else might have copies of that as well. So why don't we do this? Why don't you, what is your purpose for this evening, and maybe you could explain to us what you're looking to do.
We're looking to convert the barn into an ADU.
Okay.
So it'll just be a one-bedroom, 1.5 bath unit.
Okay. Sink. You have listed on your application the appendix for the conditional use permit. So typically, these applications require approval by the planning board for conditional use. You have listed here, side of the property, 1 bedroom, existing driveway to the barn, no additional curb cuts needed within, you're going to be within the existing detached barn, the same lot as the primary residence, and it would be converted into an ADU only.
Correct.
Okay. And actually, what we should do first, I think, is accept the application for its completeness. So typically what we do is when we do these, any type of site plan or application, we have to do what's called an acceptance or completeness of the application. And that's basically a paper exercise. All it is basically that you provided the required documents, paid the required fees and so forth. So I guess it looks like you did pay an application fee. And it looks like that has been listed here. Typically, I would ask Joan if all the fees are paid. Jay, did you have an opportunity to take a look at this plan?
I did, and I would say it complies substantially. The one requirement that we do typically ask for is a plot plan, which
Okay.
was not provided.
Was not provided.
So if the board were willing to accept the application, then I'd probably suggest doing so on the condition that a plot plan is in fact provided.
So are you planning on submitting a plot plan for this application?
We can,
I
no
wasn't
one
told, yeah.
hadn't been requested.
That's-
We
Okay.
spoke with Scott and with Joan and just asked, what do you need to see from us? And
Right.
we provided what was requested.
Yeah. Well, typically, a plot plan is required for conditional use. I know you have a rendering here on your application, but I think we need to see some sort of a plan.
It's a little less critical in that it's an existing structure. I'd
Yeah.
be more concerned if it were a proposed new building on the site.
Right.
But nevertheless,
Okay. So I guess what we can do is, we can make it a condition that you provide that information to us, if we were to grant that. But before we do that, we have to do the application for completeness. So we do have a completed application, absent the plot plan. So I would entertain a motion to accept the application, perhaps on the condition that the applicant will provide a plot plan to provide it with this application. Because the fees have been paid. I don't believe, is Butters notified for these? I don't.
No.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't see anything about that. So, does anyone want to entertain an application for completeness? It's the will of the board.
I'll happily make a motion to conditionally approve this application for completeness, barring the submittal of a plot plan showing the house and the detached barn.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Yeah, to accept it, not approve it.
Sorry.
Correct. It's an acceptance of the completeness of the application.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have a motion by Jeremy. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Second by Russ. All right. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion for the application for completeness on the condition that we are provided with a plot plan for this application, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Okay, we've accepted the application for completeness on the condition for the plot plan. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the board regarding this application this evening? So you are going to be required to provide a plot plan. we've made that a condition of the acceptance of completeness. So you're going to need to provide that to Joan, our planning board administrator, and so that we can at least have that on record for this application to go forward. With that said, does the board have any questions of the applicant regarding the conditional use permit? Yes.
I do. Hi, welcome. Your septic system as it currently exists for the residents, will it support this additional bath and a half plus?
We would put a new septic tank in for this separate unit
Okay,
And that's already been permitted and approved with the state.
with the state, correct?
I wanted to make sure we'd be able to do that first, so I went ahead and had that taken care of.
so I was gonna suggest earlier that you could probably use a previously used plot plan, but in this instance, since you're expanding that, probably not. You'll probably have to get a
Appreciate
new one, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Try to save you a little money. Oh, well.
Is the square footage documented for the proposed ADU?
It should be.
Yeah,
it's
it should
under
be on the
800.
documents we submitted. We worked with Scott to make sure we were within the
max
letter
800, yeah.
of the ordinance here, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
We understand the max is 800, is that right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
My math came to 874.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine was as well.
Just multiplying the outer perimeters.
yeah, there's
The
some
stairwell.
exclusions that I went over with Scott that wouldn't necessarily play into the living space calculation. And that was the first question I had was, I know if you go by purely the footprint, that number is gonna be in excess of 800. And there was some certain things we looked at and talked about that would be excluded from that, that would get us, safely to the 800 number, so we don't have an issue, don't need a variance.
Is the barn currently 2 stories now?
Yeah.
It is. So presumably then your second story will have, I don't know, dormers or knee walls basically that reduce that?
There'll be some knee walls, yeah, and that was the bulk
Yeah,
of
because
what,
I did the math too, it was the same.
that was the bulk of the space we're gonna lose,
That's
is
back
the knee
there,
walls.
so the
And
second story would be
stairs.
much smaller.
Got it,
Yeah, with just the knee walls and the stairs, we can easily get to 800.
yeah.
Does anybody have anything else? I know, Travis, I think you had a.
No, that was my question.
Okay.
I'm all good.
Just wanna check something.
I know it's not required, but have you discussed any of this with your neighbors? Or are they aware?
We don't know them.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's tucked away in the
It's a
back
pre-existing
anyway.
building, and so we're gonna keep the aesthetics on the outside as much as we can.
Yeah,
It's a separate driveway off our main driveway, so,
it's buffered pretty
Yeah.
well by the trees.
yeah.
Just curious more than anything.
That's page 20,
Page 20. Just looking for
the conditions. So will we be able to proceed without the plot plan for approval, or will we wait on that?
It's up to your comfort level. If you're comfortable with it, you could just make it a condition. If they submit the septic plan, that probably has, the information on it, so you could make that the condition, to submit the septic plan, because that's gonna realistically show everything you need to see.
Yeah, I mean, I could have that back here in 20 minutes. We've got it. I just have to print it out, bring it back.
Yeah, you can also probably email it
Yeah,
digitally.
totally fine. Yeah, where do I send it? Is there an email address I can send it to?
Yeah, I'll just give you mine.
Okay.
Yeah, that would smooth the process.
Right.
Easier said.
Then I guess after that's taken care of, we can probably go down the criteria of the.
Correct. Yeah. For the performance standards. So basically, for the accessory dwelling units, we need to meet the following criteria. So we're basically, the criteria is listed in the zoning ordinance for accessory dwelling units. Essentially, that it would comply with all federal, state, and local requirements for issuance of a building permit, issuance of a certificate of occupancy as a dwelling unit from the town of Litchfield. You've met that requirement, I assume. You got information from the building inspector to get a
Yeah,
permit?
he's been on site, he's reviewed everything. He basically told us you have to go through this process, but there's
Yeah.
nothing that he sees that would be an obstacle
Okay.
of really any measure
Okay.
that we'd have to work through. Just kind of talk to you folks, make sure you got what you need from us,
Got it.
and we go from there.
You understand that this is the accessory dwelling unit is incidental and subordinate in extent to the use of the primary dwelling.
Correct.
Dwelling unit is approved for the subject parcel of land is not less than 500 square feet, or more than 800 square feet of gross living area above ground. It's one accessory dwelling unit within the single-family dwelling. The owner of the property shall occupy either the primary or secondary dwelling unit. Any addition or renovation shall maintain the single-family character of the dwelling and the conformity with the character of the neighborhood. You have an internal door connecting the primary and the secondary dwelling unit to facilitate family interaction.
That's for attached.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Any required access, you have adequate parking for the existing access point. And obviously, you comply with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services regarding the requirements for subsurface wastewater management.
And to that end, I just sent that information over to Jay, so it should be in your email.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So those are really the requirements for the, basically for the conditional use.
Yeah, then there's the additional ones for the conditional use permit itself. Which is 507.06.
Septic water on it too. Septic and water.
It's a septic
Water's
plan.
municipal, right? So,
Yeah, we're on Pennachuck Water.
I might have this is amended.
okay.
But yeah,
What, can you
The-
read those off?
the conditional use permit, which is what you're here today for, basically, the requirements are that detached ADU shall be located only on the side or rear yard of the property, which it is. A detached ADU shall not contain more than 2 bedrooms. You propose 1. Parking and driveway access for the ADU shall be provided in a location in a manner that maintains the single-family appearance of the property. No additional curb cuts shall be provided using your existing driveway, right? The detached ADU shall be developed within an existing garage, barn, or similar structure. Here's a barn. The second part doesn't apply because you're using an existing structure. The detached ADU shall be located in the same lot as the primary dwelling, and said lot shall not be subdivided in a manner that results in the separation of the detached ADU from the primary dwelling unit, and the detached ADU primary dwelling or lot shall not be converted to a condominium or other form of ownership distinct from the ownership of the primary dwelling. To ensure compliance with this requirement, the property owners at the time the ADU is established shall be required to execute a restrictive covenant running in favor of the town, which shall be recorded in the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds, and a copy provided to the building inspector prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So those are all of the conditions.
Can I add a couple small things there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, just to get around the square footage issue here, if you guys could also possibly redraw the second floor to show the knee walls and the cold storage space, and also make sure the window in the front is large enough for egress for that bedroom.
All the windows are gonna be replaced. There are,
It just doesn't show it here, is my only
gotcha,
concern
okay,
here.
sure. On the second floor specifically.
Yeah, that front window in the bedroom has to be egress sized with the back door to the stairs.
Understood.
That'll get rid of the whole square footage stuff.
Yeah, so most of that will be handled by the building inspector.
Correct. Yeah, that should be on the plans for us too.
Anything else? At this time, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment on this application this evening for detached ADU? Okay, hearing none, I'll close public input on that and bring it to the board. What was the will of the board? Do you want to approve the application? Do you want to set conditions? What would you like to do?
So I guess, Jay, would you say the document provided fulfills the requirement that was missing, or?
Yes, it didn't quite get down to you. I passed it around a little earlier.
So that'll
I'm
serve as a
I'm happy to
plot
pass it
plan
down.
also?
It will, it's got all the information that we would need on
The full
it.
plot, the full septic plan.
Yep, that looks like it fulfills that.
Okay.
So that that makes things easier.
It does. So did you want to entertain a motion to
So,
approve?
so there's no conditions at that point. It's
Just redrawing the second floor?
Yeah.
I would add the redraw on the second
Yeah.
floor, make the windows big enough, and that should be fine, because the rest will go to the building inspector,
Yeah.
so.
okay. So would that be a redraw of the plans be provided to
With the application, should be fine.
with the application?
Right,
Just the second floor.
for the second floor.
The first floor has scaled measurements on it, there's nothing on the second floor, and doesn't show the cold space, which is the square footage we pull out, so.
So I'll make a motion to conditionally approve the conditional use permit for the detached ADU at 11 Carlisle Drive, with the condition that the plans for the second floor are redrawn to meet all requirements.
Okay. I have a motion by Jared. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Travis. Any further discussion? All right, take a vote. All those in favor of approval of the conditional use permit for this applicant, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 6-0-0. Thank you.
Good night.
I just give that to Joan, the second story new drawing.
Yes, so you would provide it to Joan so that she could add it to the application. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. Okay. I'm going to skip over 2 for a minute, and I'm going to go to number 3, which is the Heritage Commission. I believe we have folks from the Heritage Commission tonight to discuss a proposed warrant article for Historic District. Are you folks here this evening?
Yeah.
I believe you are. Okay, why don't you guys come forward?
Thank you. Thank you.
This, I sent,
I do.
sent it to you. I have a copy for you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Why don't you introduce yourselves and state your name and address?
I'm Marion Colby, Chairman of the Heritage Commission, and I live at 318 Charles Bancroft Highway.
Joe Stapleton, 21 Mark Lane. I'm a member of the Historic District Committee under the Litchfield Historical Society.
Good evening.
Carl Frank, 253 Charles Bancroft Highway. I'm the Vice Chair of the Heritage Commission.
Okay, well, welcome, everybody. So, this evening, the commission would like to discuss with us a proposed warrant article for an historic district. Marion, I'll let you,
We're
take it
here
away.
tonight to present a proposed historic district, or to discuss it. It was developed with the guidance of the NRPC, Litchfield Historical Society, and a committee of townspeople, interested townspeople. Our intent is to preserve the remaining homes in the historic district, which would be like an overlay district over the residential district from Page Road north to Robin Avenue. I think it's Avenue or Lane, I'm not sure. Just where the northern commercial district starts. It was one of the items that was highly regarded in the survey that was done at the last election, in March election in 2024, which over 1,800 people filled out the questionnaire. And one of the highest things that they regarded is the rural look of Charles Bancroft Highway. It was what attracted people to the town. It was something that they're interested in preserving. So that is one thing. The master plan mentions the desirability of having a historic district. And in the 1990s, there was an attempt to have a historic district, which failed. But that was a very restrictive historic district, which was restricting and requiring permits of, paint color, changes in windows, many, many things. That did not pass by the voters. The historic district that we are trying to have the voters consider is not restrictive at all as to any kind of changes to a person's home, putting in new windows or paint color or fencing or whatever is allowed by the town would be allowed under this. All we want to do is restrict demolition. So if a person were to sell a home with a large chunk of land, and there was an old property on it, that developer would know right up front that they would have to incorporate that old home into their plan and utilize it somehow, so that we are not going to lose any more historic homes in town. We lost, in the last 2 years, we lost the house at our Dark Hall Ranch property, and we lost the house at Wilson Farm. Those were two very important historic homes, and the Heritage Commission tried to come up with alternate plans of saving them, but we have no funding, and we really have no authority other than just advisory authority. So this would give us a little bit more, just in that one historic district, it would just give us a little bit more authority, and anybody buying at that time would know that, if they're buying something within that area, they would know that that was one of the restrictions about buying, and they would have to save, to save the property. Now, the other homes that just are single homes with, just an acre of land would still come under this, but it's not to say that every single home would be, restricted on demolition, depending on the situation, depending on the, age of the home, and whether it had historic value or cultural value or architectural value. So, but each one would be considered. And that is all we're restricting. We are not trying to tell, we did a very thorough, I think a thorough job of doing our research. The committee, we developed a committee for historic district, and each person did some research on all the other towns within the National Regional Planning Commission and read their historic district, rules and regulations. And some of them are very restrictive as to like even what kind of a light fixture you can use outside your house and so forth. Colors, what kind of fencing or stone walls and all of this. We have no desire to get involved in anything like that. We really are just interested in retaining the historic nature of of Route 3A, and that, Charles Bancroft Highway in that area. Colonial, Federal, Greek Revival, and just rural New England residential look. So, and of course, it would also protect our very, very old town center, which is the old town center, including the muster field, the original meeting house grounds, which all kind of dovetails with the architectural the archaeological research project that was done there within the last couple of years, where they did find, they found the footprint of the old meeting house and so forth, and I believe that our muster field is one of the only remaining ones in New Hampshire that has not been developed. And that is, a very important historical site. And there's actually some proof that there is pre-settler activity there, a Native Americans activity on that bluff there. So it's an important site. And we've tried to keep the old town hall, the church. We worked very hard to get those buildings on the state historic register, the old schoolhouse, the old town hall, the old fire station, the church, and the library. So that area of town is our old town center, and we're interested in keeping that as well, keeping that protected. And it'll help with the, use of the old town center for educational purposes. We're trying to do educational programs, keep the museum open as much as we can, we'll try to interface more with the schools and their historic programs and so forth. So it's all really just to keep the town in the shape that it's in now, and not to be restricting each homeowner. So that's our goal. And of course, in the final analysis, it will be up to the voters. But we feel that it's important to the voters, and we're not trying to restrict the people that live there from running their lives the way they want. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for the commission?
And my understanding after I talked with Ms. Kleiner, and my understanding is that if you people approve it, that then it would go in with when you do the public hearings for zoning changes and so forth. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I have a letter from Ms. Kleiner, the town administrator. This is dated October 15, 2024. Good afternoon. I reached out to our legal counsel to better understand the process of establishing an historic district. I was told the historic district is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, though the statute is not as clear on that as one might hope. RSA 674:46, authority granted for the purpose of the subdivision, the local legislative body of any city, town, or county in which there is located unincorporated towns or unorganized places shall have the authority by ordinance to establish, change, layout, and define historic districts. Within the district, the municipality is empowered to regulate the construction, alteration, repair, moving, demolition, or use of such structures and places. That can either be a planning board initiated amendment or a petitioned amendment, but either way, the selectmen have no control over it. It goes on the warrant, and if it passes, it is part of the zoning ordinance. The selectmen are the ultimate enforcers of the zoning ordinance. We would not recommend a policy of enforcing provisions with which they simply do not agree. Spoken to Marion today and relayed this information. Best, Kim Kleiner.
And if I may, this is structured to become section 2300 of the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Have you had discussions, Jay, with the Heritage
Yes.
Commission, and have you been working with them or on this?
Yes,
or?
we met a couple of times.
Okay. So you've sort of put together something for an amendment to the zoning, or have you just discussed possibilities?
Yes, I mean, I've worked with them on it. This is definitely, their draft. This is what, I think
Okay.
you've spent a lot of time working on this, but I did provide some assistance, yes.
Okay.
And there was a lot of confusion with the Board of Selectmen about this because Jay was involved with us, and there were questions about that, and he was kind enough to do this pro bono for us on a couple of meetings, because there was a lot of controversy about that, and about our working with the Historical Society and developing our own Historic District Committee. But according to the bylaws of the Heritage Commission, we are allowed to work with nonprofits in the town and with other boards and organizations within the town government. So the Historical Society is a nonprofit, and we can, according to our bylaws, we're allowed to work with them. And there was concern that the meetings were not public and, that there wasn't transparency. But because we were working with the Historical Society, we were able to use social media to reach out to townspeople, to try to involve townspeople. And I said, well, I don't know how much more public it could be than that I invited every single citizen in town to join us. And the meetings were held at the Historical Society, which is a public building with, the people, and we did get a fairly good turnout of people that were interested in helping with this. So, of people that are not in either organization, but were willing to be on that committee and try to help us with it. So we involved people as much as we could to get input. And everybody on the committee worked hard to get to where we are with this and to try to be fair to the citizens, but to try to protect our town.
Okay. Good. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so looking at the wording, this applies to any building in that area, and then it would be up to the Heritage Commission to determine if there's historical value before a permit.
Right, well, at this time, as it stands right now, any building in town that's over 60 years old.
60 years old.
Has to, that they want to demolish would have to come to the, be approved by the Heritage Commission for demolition. So we review each building and we discuss it on the grounds of architectural, historical, or cultural significance. So some of the buildings, may have architectural significance because they might be a perfect example of like mid-century modern buildings. So they may not be, a colonial residence, but they still may be, because it is part of our map here in town. It's part of our landscape. There's old, there's new, there's there's, typical New Englander style, there's colonial, there's all kinds. But we're not to say that that every building, would be, the difference would be that in that historic district, every building would come before the Heritage Commission, so even a building that's 10 years old. Now, I can't imagine somebody having a 10-year-old house and they want to demolish it because at the prices that things are right now, it wouldn't seem to make any sense to me. But I suppose, if they had some, catastrophe and maybe they don't want to restore it, then I suppose that would be, an exception that we could make. But, everything will be considered on its individual merit. And as far as the rest of the town goes, we would still consider buildings that fall within our groundwork of the 60 years. We would still have to, approve those. And not every building that's being demolished is something that we feel falls into that category. People have come to me and said, well, what about my house? And I said, well, unless your kid becomes president, you're probably not going to have historical or cultural or architectural significance, so don't worry about it. Because your house looks just like every other house on the street, so don't sweat it. But, there could be reasons why any building in town would, somebody's a famous artist or poet or, Abraham Lincoln slept there or something, I don't know. But I'm just saying there are reasons and we work, pretty hard to uncover, to look back into the history of the older homes and know the history of them and who where they came from and who built them and who lived in them and so forth. So we have a lot of history in town. That's all I'll say about the older homes. So we do work hard on it, though.
So Marion,
Yes.
disregarding the age of the house, if it falls in this district, whatever else,
Mhm.
is there a point of no return as far as the house is not, I don't say worth saving, is it not fiscally responsible to save said house? Like it's almost falling over, it's missing half the house. Is there a point in your mind that exists?
There could be, I'm sure, but there are also, it does mention demolition, the razing, destruction, removal, relocation entirely or in significant part, including blah, blah, blah. But it says demolition also includes intentional failure to maintain a building or structure to the point where it's unsafe or unfit for occupancy. But would hope that a town, that a building in town that's going down, people living in that's getting to be unfit, that there would be some other authority in town that would say, gee, you gotta, shore up your roof or do something to it. So I don't know. We haven't discuss that to that extent, but I mean, I think, yes, if there was a fire or something like that, there probably is a point of no.
I just don't want to pigeonhole someone to be stuck to have to restore their house. If something does happen, or someone buys a house and there's an outbuilding that's really quite worn down,
Yeah.
that really, maybe Abraham did sleep in, the back barn one day, but it's really, really,
Well, that's
really.
true, and there's probably our barns within that, within that district right now that are probably, a little on the shaky side, so,
Right.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there are, exceptions to this, but we are just really trying to save, the bulk of the look of our old part of town.
Did you have a question?
I do. So, Page Road to Robin
Right.
Avenue, that's 4.7 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you have solicited information from townsfolk, and you've heard a lot of favorable responses about preserving the historical structures in town. Did you receive any of that feedback from any of those people who lived on the 4.7 miles?
Yes. We have.
Have you, like,
We have received favorable and unfavorable. And the people that have unfavorable, we would talk to them about the fact that we're not trying to, talk to them about, we're not trying to restrict them in anything about their home other than tearing it down. And that seems to be what people are concerned about. They're afraid if they want to put on law. There were a lot of things that needed to be fixed about that home. And so to me, with two homes that fall into the category in that piece of land, in that, 4.7 miles is, I like that it's only about demolition for myself, because I had to put new windows in. And I had to put siding on a certain house. And I don't want somebody telling me that I can't paint, that I couldn't, replace my old broken wooden shutters with vinyl ones just for the aesthetic look of, you know what I mean? So I'm happy with that part. Carl has a house within that district too, and that was one of his concerns, I believe.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've talked to quite a number of people within that area.
so
And we had several people on the committee who volunteered to be on the committee who have old houses within that district.
So, prior to it going to the town for a vote, would every single one of those property owners along that 4.7 mile stretch be given an opportunity to, do they have the same vote as everyone else in town that's going to decide this for them?
Yes.
Yes, and also there would be public hearings as to,
Right, they have an
they have an
opportunity.
opportunity to come and speak like we are to the planning board, to the
But
Heritage
not
Commission
everyone
and so
feels
forth.
comfortable doing that.
Well, they
That's
can
why
write
I
a
was
letter,
asking
they-
if you've surveyed them, that's all.
Well, we felt that was we got input, but that actually came up as a matter of discussion, and we felt, there were a couple houses that we specifically mentioned, and members, know the residents and feel like that would be intrusive, and the people are, reclusive and wouldn't want somebody, coming to their door. But we're not telling people that they need to mow their lawn or, anything.
So, so you've gone this route of this entire stretch with this,
Which is the old,
ordinance on top of, or proposed ordinance on top of it. Have you considered other options and pockets of those buildings? Or, like, for instance, you mentioned the old town hall and the old fire station.
well, we had discussed a smaller district of, just that old town center, and then we felt that we should do the entire, residential area, what's listed as residential as far as the zoning map, because there are other, properties within that would fall under, that we would, want to be, we'd be interested in those being saved too. And one of the things that was discovered in the archaeological project that was done is that this Charles Bancroft Highway actually is an old Indian trail, and that is, the town was based along the river, north and south, and it actually follows an actual old Indian trail. And, that it wasn't paved until, it was, that's just the way the town developed. It's very historic. The road itself is very historic. There was one bypass done that straightened out one curve up by Colby Road, but
that's building on those areas, right? Are there, like on the muster grounds, forgive me, but are there improvements already on the muster ground?
No.
So that wouldn't apply here, right? In the sense that.
Well, the
you're
town
talking
owns
about
that land, and we
demolition.
won't want the town to decide they're gonna
Sure.
put up a recreation center there, or a boys club or something, boys and girls club or something. So we don't want to have any development there. But there's also land south of that hasn't been developed, that could be developed, and we would, and there's,
And this would not get into development. This has nothing to do, this has the preservation of the structures that are there. If somebody needs to or wants to take down a building, they come to the commission and they say, listen, I need to make a change here. Can I do this? And that's what we're trying to prevent. We're not telling them they can't build anything. If they want to put a new home up, they can put a new home up.
Right,
They
but
wanna
we-
change
I'm
the
sorry, that's different than what you just said.
no,
That's
well,
fine.
no, we
it's-
didn't say that they couldn't put up a home. It's about the demolition, but you
It's
asked me
demo-
about the muster field,
Yeah,
and you said it wouldn't apply to the muster field. Well,
As
it would
it's
still be
written
within
here.
the district, that's all, but it isn't gonna apply to the muster field
Got
as far as demolition, because nothing's standing on it right now.
Okay.
There's no-
And the other thing is that we would want the planning board to know that this is part of the zoning ordinance, so that when they approve a development, that they know that there's an old building on, that they know that that developer has to agree that they're going to utilize that building in some way as part of, incorporate it into their plan, which was agreed upon at the Dark Hall Horse Ranch. And then the builder changed his mind and decided that building wouldn't suit his purposes, and decided that it had to come down. And the Heritage Commission was without any kind of, that wouldn't have fallen into this area because it's in the commercially zoned property. But it would have maybe given us a little bit more persuasive power to have the board, encourage that developer to keep that land, since he originally said, to keep that house, since he originally said that he would keep the house. That's all.
Jay,
Mr. Point, I could probably find a way to argue under this that it would apply to the muster field, but significantly, we'd have to do a count. But by statute, if a zoning district change is affecting 100 property owners or fewer, you do have to send individual notice.
I would hope you would,
So, yeah, so in
regardless
this,
of what the law says, just as a courtesy.
potentially, but I do believe that
But I thought your question was, had we gone out and
I had-
surveyed all of
I
those
had asked
people?
you
And that
that.
reason, and the answer to that was no, because we felt we didn't have the authority to be going knocking
Oh,
on
sure.
doors and talking to people
Sure.
at this point, since this was just a draft and hadn't come before you people yet, and hadn't come before the selectmen.
so
we
Jay,
would be required to do that.
Sure.
does anybody else have any questions?
So I guess with enforcement, says through the zoning board of the town of Litchfield. So would that be a zoning board of adjustment, or
Yes, so a decision made under this ordinance would be appealable to the zoning board.
okay? And so this will make it give more authority to the Heritage Commission to basically block a demolition.
The Historic District Commission.
Or-
Yes, that's right. They could make the decision. In order to demolish a building, the individual seeking to demolish a building would have to get a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic District Commission. So if they could grant that, and then that's that, or they could deny it, yes. Under the current ordinance, they can't deny it. There's only a delay.
Okay.
So they would first go to the commission to get that certificate.
If
and
they're in this district,
if-
yes.
If they voted to allow that certificate, then they would come to us? Is that how it
No,
would
they
work?
would go directly to the building inspector for a demolition permit.
Okay.
Who would handle the notification of the 100 or less people if that were the case?
We would have to,
The town?
yes.
And the cost is obviously the town also?
Yes, it's first class, it's not certified, it's first class, but yes, we would. And that'll be true for any zoning ordinance amendment that we seek that it impacts 100 property owners or fewer. In a district.
The district boundaries to me seem a little fuzzy. The historic district generally encompasses the historic center of Litchfield, including parcels fronting on Charles Bancroft Highway between Page Road and Robin Ave. If we could tighten that up a little bit and define it as parcels on the Charles Bancroft Highway, not parcels generally, you know, it just seems like we could scoop up a lot of parcels that have some tangential relationship to the frontage.
Okay.
Well, it says it only includes properties fronting on Charles Bancroft only.
How-
Yeah, but and take that, like the generally, so like,
It
you know,
just seems
historic
general the
district
way it's worded.
encompasses the historic center of Litchfield,
Including parcels.
including parcels fronting on Charles Bancroft Highway between Page Road and Robin Ave. So not generally, specifically.
And it might be a good idea to map it.
Yeah, I'd just like to tighten that up a little bit, define it more clearly.
Yeah, because because people asked about, well, what about, you know, something on a side road, but that, it's
Right.
just the Charles Bancroft Highway, yeah.
Yeah, so we should be clear about that.
Yeah. In addition, some of those parcels are really big in the fact that they span all the way from Charles Bancroft Highway to Albuquerque, or at least a good portion of the way. And I don't think many of those have anything on the non-Charles Bancroft Highway side, but in the future, if they do, they would either have to subdivide or they would have, or this would apply to them. And also,
But that's if they had property on there for demolition. A lot of those properties are, there's nothing on.
Right.
Yeah.
Farms and forest, so they wouldn't even come to, there's nothing to,
but if they do build something,
Yeah, if they
that
build
will
something.
apply at that time.
and
Well-
some away in.
And then the question comes to us, is it historically, culturally, architecturally significant? Chances are not if it's that new.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's like Riverview Circle. All the buildings are facing away from Charles Bancroft Highway, but technically, like a good quarter of the properties have frontage in the technical sense along Charles Bancroft Highway.
Can you just, I'm not familiar, where is that?
That is
It's across from Snowdrop.
just a little north of Talent, and I think it's near.
It's just
Wilson.
south of
Between
Wilson.
Yeah,
Talent and
just
Wilson,
south.
that circle down in the, what was it? field?
Where Jack and Cheryl live.
Where Campbell's Farm used to be?
No, Campbell's Farm is further up, right on Wilson Farm.
Yeah,
You look at his barn,
yeah,
right to the left, that neighborhood down there.
yeah,
Some of
that's
that-
the
Go down
one.
the
Oh,
hill
yeah,
and
that
there's
used to
that
be
circle.
Campbell's, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Some of that
Yeah.
frontage is on.
Oh, some of those front on Charles
There's
Bancroft,
a few
okay.
that are on 3.
Yeah, all those.
Yeah. How would it affect the 55-plus communities along there, too?
Yeah, it ends at the bottom one. If you go south, Jay. That one right there.
Isn't that
That's
just below Page Road?
That's Page Road right there.
It's right at
Oh,
Page.
it's right there, okay, yeah.
So it
okay.
does get swept up.
Well,
So I'm assuming a 55 plus community would not be considered historical.
well, I'm not going to judge anything right now unless we had an application in front of us, but in my opinion, and I might not be the, you know, the chairman at the time that, or might not even be here when they decide that they want to demolish one of those, but my opinion would be, you know, probably wouldn't be historically, culturally, architecturally significant. I mean, just sitting here and just, you know, guessing at it without the
Yeah.
information in front of me, but I'm just saying every house isn't going to.
Are there definitions for that criteria, or is that subjective, open to interpretation of whomever's sitting on the board at the
I think
time?
it's open to interpretation. I don't know that I've seen,
Well, based on what we know of the property through the historical records at the Historical Society and other sources,
yeah.
the determinations made.
I mean, there have been Jay, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Yeah.
inventory's done of all the houses in, the older houses in town that list, like, the age of the home and so forth. And we do have, I think that was done a couple different times, and there's records up in Concord. So if something came up like that, we could go to the historic, resources up in Concord and look at the property and see. So that would give you criteria for, architecturally significant, and, and historically significant, I would think.
Yeah.
Culturally significant, I mean, there are places in town that, that people who have been in town for a long time find culturally significant because of, just activities that have happened in town or,
Hot dog stand that's long gone.
there you
but,
go,
yeah,
right.
That was culturally significant.
We have the sign down at the Historical Society.
When you showed that map on the on Page Road there,
Jay showing.
portion, that senior housing development, there was a home there that was burnt up by the fire department as a practice. So that may have, at that time, if we
Right.
had that, may have fallen into where
Right.
that house needed to stay part of the,
Part of that development at
Part
the
of that
time
development.
had this existed.
right. that
Well,
could
say
have
for
fallen-
instance that you had a farmhouse and you had land that went to the river, and you decide that you want to build on that land. Well, so somebody wants to put the money in to put, a development in there. Well, perhaps they'd have to think about, saving that, they would have to think about it if they bought that land, that old farmhouse would have to be considered as part of their development. That's what we're
Right.
interested in preserving.
Yeah, somebody come along and take down a 100-year-old building or a 59-year-old building that we have no control over, and they put up a huge multi-modern development that changes the character of the road. So what we're trying to give is the townspeople and to the zoning board and through the Heritage Commission, the ability to put the brakes on some of that.
Right, that's all we want.
Not taking away the rights of people to do what they want with their property so much is
Right.
that they just can't, through neglect or decide to just tear it down and do something different.
And I like that about this iteration of the concept, where previously it was very restrictive.
Yeah.
It was
That was
a
very
lot
restrictive at that time, yeah, I
yeah.
remember that one.
And we worked with the NRPC, and they did give us a number of criteria. There was a much bigger document, and we did work a number of hours going through each piece and figure out what, and also a couple of folks did have from their other cities and towns, Milford and Amherst and Nashua and so forth. We looked at all of theirs, and there are some really pretty restrictive ones. And you go further on to Peterborough and in the western part of the state, there are some pretty significant historic districts that really, you can't change a light bulb in the house
Yeah.
inside. And so we don't want to get into that. We
Right.
just want to
I
preserve
know
the
people who
character.
are constrained under those circumstances, and I would not want to inflict that on the residents here.
One of the guiding lights for us was the response of 1,800 people is telling us that they like 3A and the drive up 3A. And it is a pretty significant ride. It's much better than Albuquerque. I live on Markland, I could go up Albuquerque, or I'd rather go up 3A. Even though it might be a little more traffic, or I might get the school buses more, but it's a much nicer, prettier ride. It
is.
really is. It's much better than, Albuquerque, to me.
Yeah.
And so, we want to preserve that for the townspeople. People have told us they moved here because of that type of thing. So,
So I guess the question is, what are the next steps to this? Obviously, you have drafted a proposed zoning ordinance regarding the historic district. Are you looking for, is the planning board going to review that? Is that the plan? Did you guys want to participate in workshops to do that? Jay, what's your?
So this is a zoning ordinance amendment, and we would handle it the same way we would any other amendment. So the planning board would make a decision as to whether or not to send this to public hearing, first public hearing, as we typically do too. And then you would make a decision as to whether or not you want to send it to a second public hearing, if there were a first public hearing, and then you'd vote whether or not to put it on the ballot. It's obviously, the Historic Society, the Heritage Commission could submit, could also try to go the petition route. So that's also an avenue.
Right, if this one doesn't work.
Right, so if it
Well, we
looks as
wanted to
though-
do it through the Heritage Commission because we could do it, through this process. I did want to clear up one thing because Jay referred to the Heritage Commission will be responsible for administering the ordinance. And it's my understanding that you wouldn't have both the Heritage Commission and the Historic District Commission, so the Litchfield Historic District Commission would not exist upon if the warrant article is adopted. So it would all come under the Heritage Commission. We can't change it to the Historic District Commission because there's a lot of area in town that still comes under the Heritage Commission as far as demolitions, but we just wouldn't have we would only have advisory authority on the other areas in town, like anything that's in the commercial or anything that's off of the 3A corridor, that would be in other areas of town that might fit the criteria, something on 102 or something, in other areas of town.
Are you good with the language thus far in terms of this?
Are we? Well,
Are you still working on revising it?
No, we revised it quite a bit from what
Yeah, I
was
think this
originally
is
proposed.
pretty adequate.
We're open to suggestions like taking out the generally, and sort of like fine tuning it.
Yeah.
But this is really the matter, this is kind of like what we want to have in it. As far as, changing the spirit of it, we would want to discuss any changes that you had that were going to significantly change the
Okay.
the final outcome of it, but we definitely wanted, but like I said, we're open to fine tuning it.
So, another thing about enforcement, how will the town enforce an unmaintained building that doesn't have anything under review by a board in town?
Same way it currently does, through the code enforcement office.
So someone would report it to the code enforcement office, the code enforcement office would visit the site, realize it's not maintained, and then probably bring that to the attention
They
of
would
the...
determine it's a safety risk of some sort
Mhm.
and take action in compliance with the regulations that exist.
Yeah, there's procedures in the building code for that.
So.
I mean, it's in my opinion, somebody has a plan for, 20 years down the road to demolish something and wants to get around this, and they decide they're gonna let their building go, well, they're probably it's probably gonna take longer to let one of these buildings go to the point where it's gonna fall down than the lifespan of the people on the committee, so, I mean, I can't see them taking that route, to neglect a building to the point where it would fall down just to get around what we're asking them to do.
But in our definition area, it does describe that
Yeah,
intentional
yeah.
failure to maintain a building, so code enforcement would be involved in saying, no, you can't do that.
I mean, it's to their bet, I mean, it's to someone, you're trying to keep up your property value, you're not trying to let your property fall apart, so hopefully, but I understand how expensive all these projects are, so probably, maybe someone would need a nudge to say, well, you have to take care of, you have to have, a roof, or you have to have, I don't know, you have to shore up your barn before it falls on someone or something, I don't know. I'm not sure how all that works.
So I have another question then. If someone builds where there is no building now
Mhm.
on this 4.7 mile stretch, will this be put into the deed of that property?
I have no idea.
You mean like a restrictive covenant?
No, it wouldn't. It's simply a zoning ordinance, so it would not be put into someone's deed.
So I keep hearing too that you were talking about the historic nature, how you deem something would be of importance. Do you have those generalities or those specifics with regard to that subjective viewpoint? I mean, do you have that written down? Because I don't, in here, I don't see that. So you'd be asking voters to just trust you. of what you deem historical?
Well, we can point to historical records that we have.
Sure.
You know, during the 1952 presidential primary, such and such slept at this location, or this is the, original place where an Amoskeag executive grew up, or something like that.
Yeah, I think I would be more comfortable with putting this to public hearing if it had more explicit language on the review process. Obviously, some of them are more subjective.
Explains it a little better.
But like a specific bullet point on the subjective aspects and a bullet point on the objective aspects on like the review process and like what criteria need to be found.
Jay?
Just throwing it out there, but as an option, Marion alluded to it, but there was a historic preservationist who did do an inventory using the National Register of Historic Places criteria. So she went through, and of course a number of those buildings are gone now, but she went through and rated every building. So architectural style, age, significance, is it contributing? Sometimes it's not contributing. One thought might be we could dig those up. You've got those records.
Yeah, I know they're up in Concord at the.
Right, so one option could be that actually the language in the ordinance references buildings that are listed on that inventory, and then you have an objective.
Cite that in there.
Right, and then that also takes away your homes that were built on Riverview or whatever, it wouldn't apply to them.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's only fair for those folks who own property, or, to know if they're the ones who, they don't want to find out later. They'd rather find out sooner if theirs is a property of historical and importance and significance.
Or a structure on that property.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Or if they have a 1 acre site with a home on it, then it's unlikely that there's any way that they're going to be selling it to someone who's going to develop that property, that 1 acre, and want to tear it down, but I suppose it's possible. So,
There could be redevelopment
Right.
opportunities too, though. Taking an existing structure that you don't like and foolishly throwing money at demolishing it, building something you do like in its place, and then you
well, like
lose,
people
the
do
town
in
loses that
shore
historic
towns
structure.
and things like that.
Right,
tear
right.
downs, But,
So
point taken.
perhaps, I don't know, and this is just a suggestion, but maybe, do we want to have another, maybe workshop on this? And invite the Heritage Commission folks or to come in and discuss, this ordinance and how we can make it, better, and suggestions and so forth? Because it sounds like there may be some stuff to consider.
And that's fine, and we know that from our bylaws, that we should be working with the planning board.
I mean, it certainly sounds like you have a great starting point, and maybe we could work to make it, stronger, better,
Yeah,
whatever.
We're very willing to work with the planning board
Okay.
and are available to the planning board for any, anytime you need any information about any of the historic resources here in town.
And I believe we have a workshop meeting on October 29th. If you're interested to come to that meeting, we could, certainly like to have you there, and you
Okay.
can
What time?
chime in. It's 7:00.
7.
And is that a Tuesday as well?
That's a Tuesday, yeah.
in this room,
I
Yeah, I
Bel-
believe so.
believe so, I'm not.
Double check that.
I'm gonna double check
know
that
that
one
one like
with
3 times
Joan,
today, so-
yeah.
If we
'cause
get
it
here,
could be the
we'll know
fire
it's at the
station.
fire. If
I
you're
don't-
not here, we'll know it's over there.
Right.
We'll let you know.
I've gone to the
It's-
wrong meeting a few
It's
times.
one or the other, so
Town calendar says it's here.
it's here,
Okay,
so yeah.
okay,
that's
7 p.m. Okay, yeah, we'll accept
Okay.
that invitation and
Great.
bring our materials. I don't know if we'll be able to get our hands on that. I'll find out about that though from
I think I've seen that.
LHS.
That sounds
We may have
familiar
we may
something.
have some of it here, but I know when we went up to Concord to do our research for the you know, for the 5 buildings being on the State Historic Register, I remember seeing all that information up there. We did.
You know, if you could track down some samples of what it is, we can understand what
Yeah.
that criteria is gonna be, so it has more of a
Right.
impact on us,
Makes
that structure,
Right,
so.
Okay.
understood, yep, okay.
Well, all right, well then I guess
Thank
we'll
you for,
see you on the
and for
29th.
considering our proposal, and we'll be looking forward to working with you on the 29th.
Okay, excellent.
great.
Thank you very much for
Thanks.
coming in.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a great night.
Okay, next item is a site plan application, Lobster Boat Condo Association, for a consolidation of 2 lots into 1 lot and a site plan for 2 buildings of multifamily housing, 6 units each. The location, 273 and 275 Dairy Road, tax map 2, lot 2 and 2A. I believe, you had, you said you were going to abstain from this one?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, I guess, for that purpose, obviously, if you want, you could sit in
I was gonna say that.
the,
I'm happy to do
the
that.
gallery.
Yep.
Yeah, just, for that purpose.
Can you get around?
All right. Good evening. Would the applicant introduce himself?
Absolutely. My name is Paul Chisholm. I'm an engineer with Keach Nordstrom Associates. We are the engineers and surveyors of record for the project.
Okay. Well, good evening. I know that this is your second time here. You did present to us last time. I know there were a few things that you wanted to work on in terms of the plan. So I guess maybe you could discuss some of the what you've done so far with the plan, and maybe we can talk about the waivers. I know there's a couple waivers issues that need to be resolved. So I'll let you take the floor.
Sure, yeah. Just so a very general recap of kind of what has transpired since the last time we all met. We did make the updated plan changes. That was all really stemming from, Jay's planning review, as well as Lou Caron's engineering review of the project. I know Lou issued a letter, I think, over the weekend, basically stating that all of his concern had been addressed, notwithstanding a vote on a waiver for parking space size, which I'll get into in a little bit. I think at the last meeting, we basically kind of told you what we planned on doing and had kind of a draft plan in process that we had showed you. Really, everything kind of stuck to the script on that. There was a number of parking spaces adjacent to the actual commercial building that's closer to the frontage of the property that were removed. The sidewalk was extended, all the way up to 102. The dumpster was relocated. The landscaping was enhanced between the properties and along the drive going down. And then some other, just technical engineering things that I don't really want to get into that, Lou was concerned with drainage and things like that. All that stuff's kind of been flushed out. Certainly happy to chat about any of those. The other thing I should probably mention is basically a draft of the legal documentation was also provided. That really just spoke to kind of the nuances of the condominium situation here. It's a little convoluted with the fact that there's an existing condominium, there's a second lot that's being absorbed into the property, so really that's going to get scrubbed and then a new thing's going to be put in its place. The attorney on the project is Attorney Morgan Hollis. He's obviously a well-respected land use attorney in the area and has been doing it a very long time. His first step with all of that is just to work with the only other owner that has a piece of the condo, which is the doggy daycare and grooming facility, which is basically the building with the fenced in the back all the way to the south and west corner of the property there. And so their bank is really going to dictate a lot of actually how the technicalities of that condominium kind of are formed. And so he could prepare a draft and things like that, but there's obviously, that could change significantly from, what at the end of the day gets instituted into the project. So that's kind of where that's at. There were some other things in terms of easements and a couple items like that. Mainly, access easement for the emergency road. It is going to be gated. Obviously, you see the road kind of continues beyond the two buildings. That will be gated to prevent, anybody from just driving down there. But obviously, we'll have a Knox box and things like that for the fire department, should they need to access the property in the rear in case of an emergency. However, pedestrian access is certainly promoted, and something that everybody, I think, is wanting to encourage between the two properties, given the commercial uses at the frontage of this property. So easements will be ultimately, drafted for that, but that's certainly the intent. And I think you probably heard that as well when the Rose Meadow project came through. So all of that still holds true. The one thing that is in is the water line, and we were asked to basically have that located, put that on the plan. So that's another technical thing that was added. And that easement's a little more straightforward. That's, you take 10 feet on one side of it, 10 feet on the other, and there's your limits of your easement. And that's a typical thing that Penachuk does. So those are generally the plan changes. I'd certainly be happy to talk about any of those in detail. Again, another refresher, we are obviously seeking site plan approval as well as a conditional use permit, given the impervious area proposed for the project. And then the three waivers are for the NHDOT, for certain sections within the traffic requirements of the ordinance. I should note that the NHDOT actually did approve the driveway permit just recently. I think yesterday, actually, we got that permit approval. And so, they were certainly happy with what we had done. I think they had asked us to add, restripe kind of the stop bars and add new stop signs that are the correct size and some minor things like that. But all that was cleaned up fairly easily. So one of the waivers just kind of, looks at which parts of the section probably don't apply for a project of this scale and scope. One of the other waivers is for some of the parking that exists in the 50-foot front setback. And basically, I'm just going to point to the plan here. We're proposing 2 additional parking spaces here and here. Really, I think the key reason to have them is actually so in the winter when things are plowed, it just provides a nice area to actually push the snow onto, where you're not ruining the landscaping and things like that you have to fix again in the spring. And parking's at a little bit of a premium, so they want to make sure that they're not eating up any of the existing spaces with that. So that was kind of the idea between that. Technically does need a waiver as well. And then the third waiver is for parking space size for the new spaces by the apartment buildings. Those are proposed as 9 by 18, where a 12-foot wide space is required. And then within, I believe it's the garage space isn't quite wide enough by code, technically by the site plan regulations, but is by kind of a building code thing. So just a little bit of a nuance thing there, but technically those shouldn't count towards the count, but realistically, this is kind of a tried and true size, I guess, for a single stall garage. So certainly feel comfortable with that as well. But so those are the 3 waivers, and then of course we talked a little bit about the conditional use permit and the site plan last time. So I guess I'll stop there, and really just happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant? So you were seeking a waiver for traffic.
Correct.
And can you remind me, was there traffic counts for this project?
No, right, so we didn't have traffic counts. We basically, what was submitted was, proposed traffic generation. We didn't look at or consider the previous residential development that had, kind of dilapidated and been recently torn down that existed on the adjacent lot. We just looked at it like, we have 12 new units going in there. How much extra traffic is gonna, be added by that? And then we also submitted the other things that the DOT typically requires for their DOT permit, site distance, some things like that. So Whatever didn't fit in that DOT permit application, seeing as they were the ones who obviously administer that driveway, those were the things that we asked for the permit, and then we figured, for the waiver. And we figured if they had required anything else, obviously we would have, done what we had to do to get their permit. But no, specifically traffic counts were not done.
Anybody have anything? Jay, any comments that you'd like to make?
Really not many. I think I had provided a fairly detailed letter early on in the application process, and they have addressed all the comments and concerns that I had. There is a consolidation plan that's been included as part of the package. They're addressing the condominium issue. The sidewalk was extended all the way to the road, which is one of the things I'd asked for. The dumpster was relocated. They've added some additional trees in terms of landscaping. Really the concerns that I had have been addressed. I know Luke Herron had some engineering comments. Those have also been addressed, and he's provided a letter to that effect.
Can you just reference that? What were the comments that Lou had?
I have it with me. He actually had a number of things. So he asked, do you want me to go through each one of them? There's a couple pages here, or maybe I can pick a couple of the bigger
if you
ones.
can summarize what some of them are.
He had some questions about the consolidation and condominium. We had to clarify our parking calculations to just state them a little bit more specifically. He asked for the water lines to all be located. Those have been added. To add the tank for the septic system that did exist with the previous old, residential building, the 3-unit building there. Added a couple dimensions to parking, landscaped areas, driveway aisles, parking spaces in a couple more locations. Some location things on the plan like roadway center lines. There was a question about, there's kind of like a landscape pile that exists along the frontage of, it's kind of over in this area here, that was basically the previous owner of the property, the adjacent property, the smaller one, had made this landscape pile, and he was asking what happened with that. That's basically going to be removed.
Actually already is.
It's already gone. Well, there you go. Yeah, they probably did for the water main installation. Yep. Yep. Some things for erosion control through construction. Asked what kind of grass seed mix. We had to, the lighting plan, it just didn't relate, the labeling was a little funky, so we made that more clear. Same thing with a couple additional labels added to roadway and drainage profiles. We had to show a max height on the little retaining wall detail that we have. And clean up on the wood beam guardrail detail and the stop sign detail, which DOT commented on that as well. And then some things with the drainage calculations that I think he even mentioned at the last hearing weren't going to amount to much, and they did not. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell for him.
Okay, thank you. You have a driveway permit. Are there any other permits that you're waiting on?
We haven't submitted for the state septic system yet. We're just kind of waiting to make sure nothing changes through this process. I think at this point, we're certainly feeling comfortable enough to submit it, but, so I imagine in the next week or so, we'll get that up to the state.
Can you just quickly address the conditional use permit again?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so as I mentioned, the conditional use permit, we are in the Aquifer Protection District. And, you know, basically, there are certain rules that are associated with that in terms of impervious area. You're allowed to, without any conditional use permit, without anything, you know, approval through any kind of process, have 15% impervious area on the property. By conditional use permit, which is the application we have filed, you're allowed to, I believe it's up to either 55 or 60% impervious on a commercial property, which is what this is. We are at, I want to say it's around 35% impervious, 35% impervious coverage. So we're above that minimum threshold where there's no requirement, but under the maximum threshold, pretty squarely in the middle there. But obviously it does require that, you know, we meet the certain criteria that the zoning ordinance calls out for that. The narrative that we submitted, I think, addresses each one of those criteria. You know, it's pretty straightforward for an application with two, you know, 6-unit apartment buildings, basically, so.
Any other questions from the board? Jay, anything else to add?
No, just to clarify the garage question, for reasons that I'm really not sure of, a garage is not required in a multifamily development, but if you have a garage, the dimensions have to be 24 by 20. I have no idea why that's so, but essentially that requires a 2-car garage, where pretty ordinarily in a townhouse, you know, a development, if you have a garage, it's a 1-car garage. So that's the reason why the waiver.
For the purpose of the waiver, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
Okay. At this time, if there is no other questions from the board, at this time I'll open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this application this evening? Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. I guess we can certainly, if you want to address the waivers first, we can do that. And then if you want to do a conditional approval, you can certainly do that as well. It's up to the board what they feel.
You'd want to act on the conditional use permit also.
And the conditional use permit. So we would act on the waivers, the conditional use permit, and then approval. So does anyone want to make a motion for any of the waivers? Now we have a couple of them. One is on the traffic impact. The other is off-street parking and loading. And obviously the issue of the garage, the development. So. And of course, if anybody has any questions, they can certainly ask them as well.
So there's the impervious surface.
Mm-hmm.
Is that that's a conditional?
That's conditional.
That's conditional use, so that would be the conditional use permit.
So that just has to be addressed, and then there's the garage dimensions, off-street parking, and traffic impact.
Yeah, and the garage dimensions, just to be very clear on that, it's also the parking space dimensions for the spaces in front of the units. By code, they're supposed to be 12 feet wide by 18 feet long. We did 9 feet by 18.
What's the standard size?
So interestingly, typically 9 by 18 is very common, 10 by 20 is very common. The only place we specify a dimension is specifically for multifamily housing, and that says 12 feet.
Yeah, part of our goal for that was obviously, you know, we do have, we're in the Aquifer district. We tried to keep impervious area as much as possible down. That was one way to do it. There's also buffers that exist with the man-made pond and the brook that kind of runs beside the property there. So we were also doing our best to stay out of that. So that was part of the driver of that. And certainly, they don't feel, the applicants don't feel that having a smaller parking space is going to hurt the development in any way. And if it were to, and someone didn't want to, say, rent the place because of the size of the parking spaces or something, then they're willing to take that risk, so.
Yeah, it'll just be an inconvenience to the people driving there. Do we have to reference specific details on what the waiver's addressing?
I mean, I think it's already in the record,
Yeah, I
so.
believe it is. We have regulation sections 120.1.1, that's the traffic impact study. Section 120.14 is the off-street parking and loading.
Okay, so,
What 120.14.4.AS is the parking
The
size.
parking size,
Yeah.
okay.
so I guess I'll write that down, so.
I don't know if you guys have paper copies, but I can give you this one if it's easier.
That might be
Just
very
remember
helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Were there any comments from the fire department at all regarding the project?
They actually, they wanted to know hydrant locations. They were fine
Hydrant
with everything else, yep. And I think actually Joan had reached out and asked for a second hydrant location along somewhere closer to the frontage on Dairy Road. We have one down by the new apartment buildings, but we did add a second one closer to the main road there.
Okay. Any comments from police department at all? or-
No.
So is it one waiver for the parking spot near the road and the parking sizes?
Yes, yeah, so one of the waivers, 120.14 specifically for this space that's located in the front, the 50-foot front yard setback. Obviously, like I mentioned, kind of the key driver for why we want the space or why they want the space is really more for snow plowing and then, of course, the use of an extra 2 spaces up front there, but you kind of have to keep it in line with the existing parking lot if you're going to do that, so.
And it's the same section or same one for the garage and parking space?
Yeah,
dimensions?
that's correct, yep.
Okay. So that's one. So I guess, does anyone else have any more comments regarding the 120.14 off-street parking and loading waiver?
No, I think I'm good.
So I'll make a motion to grant a waiver for off-street parking and loading, 120.14, to allow a parking space within the 50-foot setback and for separate or for non-standard dimensions for the parking spaces and garages.
Okay. I have a motion as to the waiver request. Do I have a second?
I will second Jared's motion to approve the waiver for 120.14.
Okay. I have a second by Jeremy. Any further discussion? Okay, I take a vote. All those in favor of the waiver request for 1.20.14, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 5-0. Right, so that's one.
So then, does anyone have concerns about the traffic impact study waiver.
I guess my question is, given that, I mean, we talked about 102 being a busy road, and I know that there's work on another project that, next to this one, that we've heard about. I guess my question is, what is the hardship for the waiver purpose, for purposes of waiver? What would be your hardship regarding traffic?
I guess I don't know hardship as much as the spirit and intent we believe is being upheld, because when you really think about why these regulations exist, right, it's to maintain all those concerns you're talking about with heavy trafficked roads, having correct access, making sure that this development isn't going to cause any problems associated with any of the adjacent road networks or driveways or make anything unsafe in any way. And certainly we feel like all of that is being upheld. It's really just, there's a one-size-fit-all ordinance here that's at play. And so, I guess the question is, do you feel really that the size and scope of this project would warrant a further traffic analysis? Obviously there was probably one done, I would imagine, for the, Rose Meadow project. I would imagine a project of that scale, that makes a lot of sense. And again, in this case where it's a road that's really kind of dictated by the DOT, we just felt that whatever, whatever criteria they were looking for, we were more than happy to provide, to just make sure that, basically that we're meeting all the rules and regulations that the DOT kind of covers on that. So,
And when, for the permit, for the DOT permit, was that discussed in terms of the traffic impact, or did they?
Yep,
talk about it?
part of that is we have to, along with any other DOT permit, provide traffic generation calculations. So that's saying there's going to be X amount of more vehicles going to the site every day. In the peak hour, just overall. So there's certain criteria there. Housing in particular, multifamily housing is a pretty well-studied area of the ITE, I would say. There are some land use codes in there that aren't quite as well studied, and there's limited information on that. And what I mean by that is, some typical things in places that the DOT looks just for impacts are like the PM peak hour, for example, is usually, everyone's kind of coming home at the same time. The AM peak hour is the next biggest rush, if you will. So those are the two spike periods in terms of traffic. And so there's some land uses that don't have some of those studied, or only has the PM peak versus the AM, that kind of thing. This is one where it's pretty thoroughly studied, and residential has all of that information available. So they're very well aware of what the anticipated, traffic generation and extra traffic going to and from the site is going to be as a result of that. They didn't feel it was necessary to do any further study or analysis.
So they didn't have any concerns about the site, because I see there are no left turn lanes for example.
Yep, correct. Yeah, so there was no requirements. The only comments that they actually wanted us to address were my clips are kind of blocked. Oh no, here we go. So they wanted us to basically restripe these things just to make them more visible. They wanted us to use what's called thermoplastic painting. That's not just a typical paint. There's actually little plastic beads that, it's almost like a film that's put down. And so when light hits that, the plastic beads actually reflect the light back. They make it easier to see at night. That's the type of stuff that they typically require. The stop sign wasn't the correct size. I think it was a 30 by 30 sign now, and it needs to be 36 by 36. So there were some minor things like that that they wanted cleaned up on that entrance.
Okay.
But they didn't feel like the expansion of use in this case really, warranted any further design modifications or anything like that.
But yeah, this is definitely a lot smaller than being 12 additional units than the 172 in our neighboring property.
On a side note, tangent to this traffic stuff here, because this is residential behind this commercial property here, possible school bus access. Any plans for this at all? How this would work?
I actually don't know that we've ever really talked about it, but, just knowing how school buses are these days, I've got two young kids, one's in first grade, and it's a problem.
Just because there's no way to turn around at the units themselves. It's
Yeah.
more of turning around by the commercial property
No,
up front.
I actually, what I would envision is that basically a bus would come in and you
That's
pick
kinda my
up people
thought.
here and just go.
Right.
'Cause you don't want the buses turning around. I mean,
Right.
they're already, that's a limited function thing anyway. So to me, that's kind of the way that I would envision that happening.
Any idea if that walk is too far for the kids these days, or?
Oh,
Because I have no idea. Kids can only walk about
yeah,
5 feet these days, so.
Right. So I know, I live in a small neighborhood in Nashua. It's probably a 1,000-foot cul-de-sac, right? And we're somewhere in the middle of that, and our bus stop is at the end of our street. That's more or less what this would be here. It's kind of the same wave of thought. I don't expect a lot of school-age kids necessarily in this development, being, 2-bedroom units, but occasionally I wouldn't be surprised if one is in there, right?
One moves in, a bus
So,
goes go. So.
Exactly, yeah. So and then you're dealing with the problem. But as a parent, personally, I don't feel like that's too long of a walk to get up to. You're off the main road. If it would be a lot different if this bus was stopping on 102, but there's certainly adequate space and maneuverability here because of the two driveways to not cause really too much of an impact that way.
Jay, anything to add on that in terms of traffic?
No, I don't think so. I think, given the small number of units, I think it's reasonable.
Do we want to vote on the waiver, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, I guess I'll make a
If
motion.
anybody has any other questions.
I'll make a motion to grant a waiver for 120.1.1 traffic impact study to not require all aspects of the traffic study.
Okay.
I'll second that.
A motion by Jared, I have a second by Travis. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve waiver for 120.1.1 traffic impact study, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 500. Okay. Next.
Use.
And that would be the impervious surface. Would that be done at this time?
Conditional, yep.
Yes.
It doesn't look to me like this is having an excessive amount of pavement. It's pretty reasonable for the use.
And we also had a favorable review from the Conservation Commission. They did provide.
We did get a letter from them, and I believe we addressed that letter at the last, they put it right into the record last meeting. Okay. Anyone want to entertain a motion regarding
Sure.
the conditional use?
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for
Impervious surface water.
impervious surface water for, what do we call this property? Hold on a second. What do we call it? The Boulder Creek site plan.
I have a motion by Jeremy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Russ. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approval of the conditional use permit for impervious surface water, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 500. Okay. I think that covers the waivers, the conditional use. Does anyone want to make a motion for conditional approval of the project? Or do you feel comfortable, or do you have any more questions for the applicant?
So the conditions would be a a septic plan and the standard conditions of approval.
So that would be a state permit, yeah. Obviously, condition on Lou's comments, Lou Karen, engineer comments.
Have
Shall
they
be addressed.
made any changes? Because the latest communication from Lou was pretty much said the only outstanding thing was the waivers.
His concerns are otherwise satisfied, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only other
Yeah.
question is whether or not you want to see, you want town council to review the condo docs.
Which we don't
Yes.
have yet, right?
Correct.
So,
But
And
they
the easement,
would,
and the easement document.
ultimately, the easement and condo regs would have to be reviewed by town council, so, yeah, definitely. So that is definitely a condition.
Yeah, so yeah, and just to clarify the letter from Lou, it was dated October 11th. He said, on October 7th, 2024, I received a PDF file of sheets 1 of 18 with notes, note 13, correction and waiver requests regarding some site parking spaces. The comments of my September 27th review report letter are satisfied, providing the parking waiver requests are submitted and approved by the planning board. So I think we're all set there.
Also, the DOT permit, there were some conditions to that they had to meet. He mentioned them. That
Are they-
had to do,
are
like
they on the-
striping.
We actually, before we got the permit, those were, they had like a letter, a review letter with comments, and we addressed those, and then they issued the permit. once
Okay.
they reviewed it. So,
The plan represents,
yes, correct, the final plan will have those, yep.
Okay, so.
does the one that you are officially submitting at this, or displaying at this time have that?
No, it does not, because that kind of happened fairly recently, to recently submit. Again, it was really talking about the two driveways, but, no, I don't believe it does. I think that all will certainly be on the final plan.
So we'll add a condition that the plans are updated to represent the changes requested by DOT.
DOT.
And also, you said the fire department had made something about the hydrants.
Yep. Yeah, certainly if you guys want to have a condition on there, just final sign up by the fire department, that's fine.
Okay.
Is the,
Because to be honest, we sent it back. I don't know that they ever actually said yay or nay to me, so.
So it was a second hydrant location closer to the frontage on Dairy Road?
Correct, yeah.
has it
That's right.
been added to the plan yet?
It has, yeah. Okay. It's on this one.
So,
So it's actually, it's located right here.
Okay.
Here was the first one, and then here's the second one right here.
Okay, so would we want another review or confirmation by the fire department? Because were there any other concerns they had?
That was the only one that I knew of.
Okay.
I think the other,
That's probably
I think a letter
accurate. They
being
asked it
petitioned.
to be shown, and I
Yeah.
think they've shown it.
Yes, yeah, I think that's satisfied. So I have, the plans are updated to represent the changes, requested, updated to represent the changes requested by New Hampshire DOT. Septic state permit, is acquired. Town council reviews the easement and condo documents.
correct.
And the standard conditions of approval.
Standard condition of approval.
Anything else? So I'll make a motion to conditionally accept or approve the plan for Lobster Boat Condo Association Boulder Creek 273 and 275 Dairy Road, tax map to Lot 2 and 2A, with the conditions that the plans are updated to represent the changes requested by New Hampshire Department of Transportation. The septic state permit is acquired. Town council reviews the easement and condo documents and the standard conditions of approval.
Okay. I have a motion by Jared. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Travis. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion for conditional approval on this application, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstained. Motion passes 5-0-0.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Moving on. Next item on the agenda, committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Jeremy, anything on economic development?
Sadly, no, our meeting was canceled
Okay,
end of last month, so
okay,
nothing new.
all right.
But we have another one coming up.
We do have another one, yes.
We have another one coming, okay, good. The Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee is actually meeting this Thursday in Nashua City Hall at 7, to discuss a application for Merrimack project. So, the Conservation Commission, has already met. They met at the beginning of the month. Their next meeting will be at the first week in November. The Capital Improvement Committee did meet, I believe last Monday, and we had input from the library and from the Rec Commission regarding projects, proposals that they brought forward to put onto the plan. And those are being considered, and the next meeting is going to be, when is it, Jay? Is it October, I want to say,
Can't make the next meeting.
no, you said, that's right.
I have one for November 4th, but I think we scheduled one sooner.
Yeah, I thought we did too. Was it the 23rd?
Yeah, I see them on the calendar for the 23rd.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was the
that's-
23rd. There'd be a meeting for the Capital Improvement Committee.
And that'll be in this room.
Yes, at 6:30. Thank you. And that's all I have for town. Jay, do you have anything for NRPC?
Well, no, we have our executive committee meeting tomorrow night.
Okay. And that's at 6?
Yes.
Okay.
6 p.m.
All right.
Jay alluded to, the Economic Development Committee will meet again on October 30th. In
Okay.
this room at 6:30 PM.
Okay. The approval of the October 1st, 2024 minutes. Did anyone have an opportunity to take a look at those? Have any questions, concerns, any amendments that you want to propose?
Call out a typo on the minutes.
Okay.
Jesse No's name is misspelled. He was the applicant that we interviewed at that meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Other than that, the minutes looked okay to me.
So, what was the spelling change that needs to happen?
So in the minutes, Jesse No is spelled as GNO.
I think it's NGO.
It's NGO.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is.
So it's just transposing the first two letters,
Yeah.
but we do want to have that corrected.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good catch.
All right. So if there's no other issues or questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended.
Make a motion to approve the October 1st, 2024 minutes as amended.
Okay, I have a motion by Jared. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Russ. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained. Motion passes 6-0-0. Thank you. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything?
I do not.
Just one thing that town administrator brought to our attention in an email today, so I'll just read what she wrote. The Board of Selectmen would like to hold meetings once a month with a board or commission on a rotating basis. This will give the Board of Selectmen an opportunity to hear your ideas, new initiatives, and/or concerns. We ask that the chair of each board or commission attend, but everyone is welcome. We put together a schedule out through December of 2025. But if you know a month when it would be better to assist you to meet with the board, please let me know. These will be informal discussions with the goal of creating dialogue and improving communication. It looks like the Board of Selectmen, the date for the planning board meeting with the Board of Selectmen is January 27th of 2025. So,
And June.
and June. Yes, of 2025. So, just letting everybody know that, there will be meetings with the Board of Selectmen, anything that, any issues or anything, if you want to participate.
Do have a selectman's rep assigned to this board, don't we?
We do, Mr. Lynch, who is not here this evening. And I don't know. I'm sure he will.
Because that should be the conduit between our board and their board. is
Correct.
their rep
That's
on our
typically
board.
the way it goes. But this was something that was brought to my attention today, so
It'll be a helpful work session,
so.
but having a more embedded selectman's presence here would be appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, I think watching the selectmen's meeting, there was concern about projects happening that they weren't aware of.
Had their rep been sitting here in our meetings, they would have that information and the input to those decision-making processes.
Yeah, ideally that would be an agenda item during their meetings for the representative to talk about
Right.
what we discuss.
Exactly.
So,
Okay.
I guess the only advantage is they'll have a board member there to discuss it with the entire board of selectmen.
Okay. Well, I just figured I'd put that on the radar and just let you guys know what's going on. We're also in budget season as well. Budget committee is reviewing budgets. I think the planning board was reviewed one of the last meetings. So just letting you know that.
Doubling the member stipends has come up again.
It always does, doesn't it? We appreciate that. No, I'm just kidding. No, unfortunately, this is strictly volunteer, so I hate to say it. Okay. Does anybody else have any other business this evening that they want to address? All right.
I'd like to make a request
Yeah,
if
go ahead.
I'm not out of line. In reviewing the ADU today, I had some questions that, the building inspector was involved in the process, and that's very good. He should be. Could he give us some input? A quick summary of what his interaction has been.
Like a written report or something?
That would help me in my decision.
I was thinking of that too, while we were doing that at least have something in writing from them,
Yeah.
Obviously, certainly, I trust the building inspector did review it and all that, but at least have some kind of document that says, yeah, I reviewed this, and these are my suggestions and whatever.
Yeah, kind of like Blue does for us.
Because it's always nice to have a paper copy, so.
Yeah, and relying on the applicant to remember the context and the exact verbiage that the inspector and they had conversations. Let's just hear it from the inspector. Let's
If you
not
have
put
a
that burden on the
report, it
applicant.
makes it a lot easier to
does.
put it on the record. I agree. Good suggestion.
How would that be formalized?
I'll say, obviously the comment's been made. It'll be
It's
in the
just a-
minutes,
it's
but I can
suggestion
convey it
when-
as well.
Wouldn't you include it in the checklist of items that need to be attached to the file, if you will, that we see? Essentially, that's
Yeah.
what you're looking at is a more robust checklist.
Because there was clearly a minor miscommunication with the lack of the site plan. Was that?
Oh, the plot plan.
Yeah. So
So noted.
Well, it's definitely something to can think about, and I think we can make that suggestion, certainly.
Yeah, whatever we can do to make it easier on ourselves as we're forming our decisions on these applicants.
Right.
Let's get as much information to us as early as we can to help us along.
Okay. All right. Very good. We will do that. Okay, anything else?
During the next workshop, would that be a good time for us to review and highlight the areas in the MS4 permit zoning about which ones we would want to review?
Yes, and I've already started kind of going through it and also going through the recommended regulations that have been flagged by DES. So absolutely, but I've also started looking at what is in fact required, which is less clear than I would have liked.
Which also theoretically could provide some leeway in what we would have to require.
Right. So yeah, I'll definitely bring that to the workshop.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, if there's nothing else this evening, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We will see you in, are we going to be on, I think, on October 29th?
2 weeks from
It'll be
tonight.
televised?
Yes.
Workshop on October 29th, so we'll see you then.
A real live meeting.
Yes.